In stories, we are pulled to the edge of our seats and captivated by twists and turns. Our actions seem to be controlled by an invisible hand. A hand like this captures the attention of an audience, causing them to wonder, what's going to happen next?
It keeps them going and stops them from turning away.
Suspense holds everything to...
Promised Neverland establishes itself as one of the best shows at delivering suspense from its very first episode. As the audience watches a suspenseful moment, their brains whirl from question to question, wondering what will happen next. Promised Neverland does this in its very first scene. We're introduced to 3 young children, Ray, Norman, and Emma. We see them staring at a gate that leads to the outside of their home. We learn they've been instructed not to go beyond the gate, since the outside is dangerous. Ray tells Emma that this idea is a lie. This makes the audience question why there's a gate and what lurks beyond it. We wonder if it's dangerous to be outside. What are these kids being protected from? What does Ray know? Or will they break out? These questions are left in the audience's mind throughout the first episode. This is called suspense, which many confuse with tension. Suspense, in terms of writing, is the anxious feeling that an audience gets when they don't know what will happen next. This usually prompts questions in the audience's mind about what will happen. According to Solstein's book titled Stein on Writing, Stein explains the difference between suspense and tension is in how long it lasts. Suspense can last for a long period, sometimes for an entire book. Tension is felt in seconds or minutes. The overarching suspense question in Promised Neverland is, will Emma and the gang be able to get everyone out of Gracefield Orphanage safely? The tension is all the little moments it takes to reach that goal. When building suspense, you must carry various tools to get the job done. This is where tension comes in. Both readers and characters feel tension through worry, anxiety, and fear. Simply put, tension is friction or conflict in a story. Tension can happen when moments are stretched out or when the audience anticipates conflict. Think about it like this. When stretching a rubber band, the tension is the action of pulling the rubber band. The suspense is questioning, will the rubber band snap? In Promised Neverland's case, we're shown the kids playing tag. Norman faces his toughest task of beating Emma. They run throughout the field, but Emma loses Norman. We see Emma walking in the forest. The camera focuses on the back of her head, not allowing the audience to see what Emma's seeing. This creates suspense, as we wonder what Emma's so drawn to. Each step that Emma takes creates tension. We know this as the directors stretch out this particular moment, similar to stretching out a rubber band. The tension is heightened by making the scene feel longer. Once Emma reaches the object she's so drawn to, the audience gets a moment of relief as their suspense question is answered. Now a new layer of suspense is added as we return to our overarching suspense question. Will they go beyond the gate? This scene puts layers on the levels of suspense and comes back to the idea that was planted in the first scene of the episode. Eventually, we learn what's beyond the gate, and the kids are comparable to animals on a farm. Staying at the orphanage means you're not being picked up by a new family, but picked up as someone's dinner. The way Promised Neverland handles this is just pure art. With a cast of highly intelligent kids, we now have our cat and mouse game against the mother of Gracefield Orphanage. In order to escape, a plan must be made. But there's a problem. Information is leaking, so there must be a traitor among the children. What Promised Neverland does with this plotline is throw misdirections at the audience. Just look at it like this. At the end of episode 3, Norman, Emma, and Ray talk about Mother potentially using one of the kids. Before this scene, we get several scenes of Glida being suspicious. Glida wants to say something to Emma, while Emma looks for the tracking device on one of the kids. Glita's glasses shine and cover her eyes at the end of the scene. She pays close attention to Emma kicking the ball. And when the idea of a traitor is raised, Glita's one of the kids we see Emma see in her shocked state. All these scenes plant an idea in the audience's mind that Glida should not be trusted. So when the idea of a traitor is raised, the audience reflexively thinks it will be Glida, since the show planted it. This is an example of a red herring, a narrative element where the writer misdirects the audience. We know this is a red herring since the actual traitor is Ray. What makes this surprising is that the Promised Neverland did not give Ray as an option when discussing the idea of a potential traitor. We're given Glida and Dawn. Once Glida is not suspected due to Norman's idea of telling Glida and Dawn different information, we assume it's Dawn since it just makes sense. And if you were clever enough to figure out Ray was the traitor, you get the satisfying feeling of knowing that you're right, thus further engaging you in the story. Before we can get stressed over our characters going through blood-pumping situations, we must care about them. Promised Neverland takes some shortcuts and characterizations to not miss delivering a suspenseful story. In Promised Neverland, details about the characters are shown and told repeatedly so that you remember them. We'll take a look at Emma to show this technique. Early in episode 1, Emma hugs Isabella. Isabella explains to Emma that she loves the part of Emma that cares about her family. Emma is also an energetic person. This is told to the audience and shown by Emma playing with the other kids. In episode 2, when Emma does not show her energetic side, Isabella suddenly appears, surprising the audience. She wants to know why Emma is acting differently, but Emma quickly explains her mental state by saying she's sad about potentially leaving the house. Again, repeating the same character trait. In episode 3, when Sister Crone plays tag with the kids, Emma prioritizes saving the kids while running rather than saving herself. This is shown to the audience and told by Crone's dialogue. Now that the audience has a consistent pattern of how a character works, we now think of the character as believable since we understand how they think. However, there is a missing detail to this. While Emma cares about her family, she does not trust them enough to tell the secret early in the season. This contradiction is done on purpose to set up the finale of the season, but we'll get to that later. Promised Neverland plays with the audience's emotions by making us underestimate the other kids. The show makes it a point that Emma, Ray, and Norman are much smarter than the rest of the kids, so we think of them as the best to handle leaving Grace Field. Promised Neverland continues to trick us into the lie by making Dawn and Gilda look stupid. When Norman finally tells Dawn and Gilda what's happening, he leaves out some info. Norman neglects to tell them that Connie is dead. This scene uses dramatic irony to make the scene more engaging. Dramatic irony happens when the audience knows more than a character in a story. In this case, we, the audience, know that Connie is not alive, so we fill in on the lie and see Dawn and Gilda as left out. When Ray confronts Norman about telling Dawn and Gilda about the lie, we get a new suspense question lingering. We think, how will Norman get around this issue successfully? It turns out, he doesn't. Norman's choice not to tell Dawn and Gilda makes them feel isolated and not a part of the group. The trio even hold their own meetings, leaving Dawn and Gilda out. This isolation makes them take matters into their own hands and find out what's really going on. Dawn steals Mother's key and sneaks into her room with Gilda. This is a very bad idea, and the audience feels how bad of an idea it is. They blame Dawn and Gilda for not thinking if they get caught. Luckily, they leave the situation unnoticed, and with the idea that Connie might be dead. In episode 6, we get the climax of this plotline. In this scene, the five discuss what happened earlier that day. Having sneaked into Mother's secret room, Ray calls Dawn and Gilda stupid, an idea that some of the audience might believe. Dawn switches the issue to Connie. He attacks Ray, Emma, and Norman on how they could die if the truth were revealed. Emma acts without thinking and indirectly confirms that they are lying about Connie. Her face jolts in surprise, becoming aware of what she did. Norman now has to explain the situation. Things slow down, tension builds. The screen turns to a close-up shot of Dawn and Gilda's eyes, capturing their horror of the truth. Dawn freaks out and breaks the tension by delivering physical conflict, punching Ray and Norman. This makes Emma feel guilty since she's supposed to be the one who trusts the other kids. She's supposed to believe that they're family. If she believes this, then what she's allowing is wrong. This epic scene only comes from understanding Dawn and Gilda, knowing Emma as a character, and playing on our expectations. At the end of the scene, we reach our resolution. Dawn comes to the realization that he's weak, ignorant, and can't do anything. That it's his fault that they didn't trust him, and that he wants to be better. Emma apologizes and tells the others that there will be no lies going forward. As a result, Emma now fully believes in her family and has fixed her contradiction. When writing a thriller mystery like Promised Neverland, the solution to the issue must not feel contrived. If so, the audience won't think the ending was earned, and they'll think they were cheated. Promised Neverland doesn't fall into this trap, as they make the Gracefield escape feel earned. This is done by yet again making the audience underestimate the characters. Emma's leg is broken, Norman is gone, and Ray is a shell of his former self. During this point of the story, all hope is lost. However, the story has been working in the shadows. Emma only put a facade of giving up and told all the kids the truth, staying true to her development. Characters like Phil were smart enough to understand that something was wrong in Gracefield, and others were smart enough to adapt and follow the plan. In isolation, this could be a bad writing decision, since it takes the audience out of seeing the plans. But this isn't the case with Promised Neverland, since it planted the seeds in earlier episodes. We already knew that they used tag as a way to train. We already knew that they had to find a way over the cliff. We already knew that Emma couldn't heal by Ray's birthday. And we already knew that Emma believed in her family. With the groundwork already built and the audience's expectations lowered, it allows Promised Neverland to jump over the edge and surprise the audience. We see everything from Ray's perspective, and we're surprised, just like him. By giving hints before the escape, Promised Neverland ensures that its end feels earned and satisfying. Hope is the idea that I think stands strongest and what separates Emma from Isabella. In episode 8, we get a look at younger Isabella. She reaches the top of the wall, but her mother gestures for her to come down. At this point, we don't know why Isabella came down. Later, we find out that a gap exists between the wall and the land. This gap represents the abyss where hope falls. When Isabella sees this, all hope is lost. When Norman sees this, we think the same, but the keys are given to Emma to make it to the other side. Promised Neverland dances on the tightrope of trust, freedom, and survival.
Just when all seems lost, she becomes the beacon of hope for everyone. A reminder that in this thrilling anime, staying on the edge of your seat is the only way to ensure you don't fall into the abyss of uncertainty.